In 1895, the richest girl in America sat behind a locked door in her wedding gown, face swollen from crying. Downstairs, 1,400 guests waited inside St. Thomas Church in Manhattan. 60 musicians played Wagner on repeat. 2 bishops stood at the altar. The groom, the 9th Duke of Marlborough, shifted his weight and checked his cuffs. 20 minutes passed. The ushers panicked. The crowd murmured. And the bride, 17-year-old Consuelo Vanderbilt, stared out the window and wondered what would happen if she simply disappeared into the street. She didn't run. She lowered her veil over her tears, walked down the aisle without a bouquet, it had never arrived, and married a man she did not choose in exchange for $10 million and a title her mother wanted more than she ever did. This is not a fairy tale about a dollar princess. This is the story of a woman who was traded for a coronet, locked inside a palace the size of a small country, and then, piece by piece, reclaimed her own life. From Fifth Avenue to Blenheim Palace, from diamond dog collars to wartime hospital wards, Consuelo Vanderbilt lived one of the most dramatic lives of the Gilded Age. And the jewels she wore tell as much of that story as any memoir ever could. The making of a product. Consuelo was born on March 2, 1877, into the wealthiest family in America. There was no birth certificate kept, no keepsake book. Decades later, an aunt had to recall the house number so Consuelo could reclaim her American citizenship. She was not a child announced with joy. She was a project quietly begun. Her mother, Alva Erskine Vanderbilt, was a woman of ferocious ambition. Southern-born, self-made within the highest echelons of New York society, Alva had married into Vanderbilt money and built a limestone palace on Fifth Avenue designed to look as though the Loire Valley had been dropped into Manhattan. Turrets, gargoyles, Flemish tapestries, a dining hall the size of a ballroom, every inch a declaration of power. And Consuelo was its finest exhibit. At 10, she was strapped into a steel brace, one rod down her spine, another across her forehead, to perfect her posture. Her mother whipped her daily, mocked her nose in front of guests, and silenced any question or opinion. "I don't ask you to think," Alva told her. "I do the thinking. You do as you're told." But beneath the obedience, something else was forming. Consuelo devoured books in French, German, and English. She memorized La Fontaine and wrote essays on the Punic Wars. She admired Joan of Arc and Dickensian orphans, characters who survived on wit and will. Her nurse, Bua, took her to visit the paralyzed daughter of a groundskeeper, a girl her own age with no dolls, no pearls, no portrait on the wall. That single visit planted something Alva could not control: compassion and the first stirrings of a conscience. By 16, Consuelo's waist measured 20 inches. Newspapers catalogued her chin, her hands, the arch of her instep. She was no longer being raised. She was being positioned, polished, appraised, and readied for export. The love that was erased. At 17, during a family voyage abroad, Consuelo met Winthrop Rutherford, handsome, discreet, American. He was no fortune hunter, no title chaser. He was simply kind. He spoke to her, not to her governess. They exchanged books, walked in gardens, talked in corners. When he asked her to marry him, she said yes. It was the first decision she had ever made for herself. Alva already knew. Letters were intercepted, friends were shut out, a footman was dismissed, and then came the performance that would seal Consuelo's fate. Alva collapsed, claimed heart palpitations, took to her bed, and whispered that her daughter would kill her with shame. Consuelo, terrified and isolated, surrendered. "Tell him I can't," she said. She never saw Winthrop Rutherford again. In his place, Charles Spencer Churchill, the 9th Duke of Marlborough. His nickname was Sunny. He was neither warm nor bright. Blenheim Palace, his ancestral seat, a gift from Queen Anne built to glorify war, was crumbling. The roof leaked, the staff went unpaid. But the name still glittered in Alva's mind like a crown. What he needed was money. What Alva needed was a title. What Consuelo needed no longer mattered. She agreed, not from hope, but from exhaustion. Diamonds as armor. After the tearful wedding, no bouquet, a face hidden beneath embroidered tulle, 1,400 witnesses to a transaction dressed as a ceremony, Consuelo entered a world where jewels spoke louder than voices. In Paris, as her trousseau was assembled under her husband's supervision, the Duke insisted on grandeur over grace. Pink velvet trimmed in sable, blue satin with ostrich feathers, and the jewels, a diamond dog collar so tight it chafed her throat, a tiara so heavy it left her with migraines. She did not choose them. She was fitted into them the way one fits a frame around a painting. That diamond collar would become one of the defining images of Consuelo's early life as Duchess. At Edward VII's coronation in 1902, she stood beneath a canopy of cloth of gold, the collar fastened at her neck like armor, gleaming, suffocating, exquisitely heavy. "I stood beneath cloth of gold," she later wrote, "and no one noticed I had disappeared." The collar was not a gift of love. It was a uniform, proof she belonged to Blenheim, to the Spencer Churchill name, to a system that valued display above feeling. In St. Petersburg, where she attended court at the Winter Palace, her tiara flashed under chandeliers while scarlet footmen stood sentinel and Grand Duchess Vladimir displayed her own legendary collection like a general showing weapons. Those jewels, it's worth noting, would later be smuggled out of Russia, sold to keep the family alive. Consuelo understood early. In this world, jewels were currency, shield, and cage. When John Singer Sargent came to paint the family at Blenheim, he refused to let her wear pearls, claiming her neck was too long. The resulting portrait, ivory satin, posture immaculate, expression unreadable, hung in the Great Hall for decades. She looked at it the way visitors did, from the outside. "He captured me beautifully," she said, "but he did not find me." The palace and the silence. Blenheim Palace rose from the Oxfordshire woods like a fortress carved from golden stone. Hundreds of windows, salons built for hundreds, fireplaces that roared into silence. Consuelo arrived to find a home designed not for living, but for impressing, and a husband who had been raised not to love, but to preserve. There were no private jokes, no shared stories. He complimented her posture at breakfast. He mentioned the weather. He slept in another room. They passed each other in corridors with the grace of acquaintances at a public function. Nodding, acknowledged, already fading. She learned her role quickly, curtsied, received guests, hosted garden parties, was presented at court. Her dresses were perfect, her bearing impeccable. She became, as she wrote, the ornament to a house built for someone else's triumph. But outside the palace, something different stirred. The villagers did not care about her waist measurement or her title. They cared that she came, that she listened, that she remembered their names. She visited schools, hospitals, poorhouses. For the first time in years, people answered her questions honestly. And in those encounters, quiet, unglamorous, real, Consuelo began to rediscover herself. 2 sons arrived, John, the heir, born to bells and champagne, not for the mother, but for the lineage. Iva, the spare, greeted with no fanfare at all. She was told a mother must not spoil an heir with too much affection. She received updates about her own children like a guest of honor, not a parent. Walking out. In 1906, after 11 years of marriage, the Duchess and the Duke separated. There was no scene, no public scandal, just a letter on her writing desk. I believe it is time we consider a formal arrangement. She stood at the window of Sunderland House, watched a nursemaid walking 2 children towards the park, and placed her small wedding portrait face down in a drawer. What followed was Reinvention. Her London Fridays drew George Bernard Shaw, Galsworthy, the Webbs, Yeats, Nancy Astor, writers, reformers, minds that did not bow to titles. They called her Consuelo, not Your Grace, not Madam, just her name. She threw herself into political life, helped found the Women's Municipal Party, ran for London County Council in North Suffolk, and won. She walked the slums. She invited the Prince of Wales to join her. He did. She gave the priestly lecture on infant mortality and refused to soften the numbers. 1 in 8 British babies died before their first birthday. She named what polite society would not: venereal disease, malnutrition, shame. Some in the audience stood and left. The Times called her brave. The Jewel Fund. Then came perhaps her most extraordinary gesture, one that braided her old world with her new purpose. She launched what she called the Jewel Fund. The appeal was direct: give a jewel to save a baby's life. Cartier opened its vaults. Tiaras arrived alongside tin lockets and wedding bands. Lloyd George's scarf pin was auctioned and sold twice. £50,000 poured in. The woman who had once worn diamonds as a cage now asked others to surrender theirs as medicine. It was a reckoning, not just with wealth, but with what wealth was for. During the First World War, Sunderland House became a headquarters for relief. She opened hospitals in Devon and London. Her home for prisoners' wives became a maternity annex with 18 beds for unwed mothers. She organised committees, raised funds, trained women to fill roles left vacant by men at the front. When her own home grew too cold and too public, 10 housemaids quit. One muttered on her way out, "I thought this was a house, it's a town hall." She handed it over entirely to the Inter-Allied Council. Her sons scattered across the front. She wrote to them daily, never knowing which letter might be the last. Consuelo, finally. In 1921, Consuelo married Jacques Balsan, a French aviator, balloonist, and holder of pilot license number 18. He had once sent her a postcard before a bombing run. "I did not expect to return." He was kind, clever, beloved by children and generals alike. He was not a man who needed to impress. He was a man who knew how to care. Their marriage was not recognized by the Catholic Church until Consuelo sought an annulment from Rome. Her mother, Alva, now elderly, softer, finally testified to what she had done decades earlier. She had forced her daughter into marriage against her will. The Vatican ruled in Consuelo's favor. It was, at last, an apology, not in words, but in the willingness to tell the truth. In Paris, she and Jacques built a home near the Champ de Mars. Renoir's La Loge hung in their salon until 1946, when they sold it to raise funds for French children orphaned by the Second World War. She chaired the building of a hospital for the middle class, those too proud for charity, too poor for private care. 360 rooms, a nursing school. Fundraising galas featured Fabergé clocks and Grand Prix dinners. Musicians clamoured to perform. Alva died in 1933. There were no suffrage banners at her funeral, just pale lilies and cold marble. Consuelo wore black and did not cry. The grief had come years earlier, in the partings that had hurt more than any passing. "She taught me strength," Consuelo later wrote, "but it was forgiveness that let me carry it." When the Second World War came, she and Jacques fled Paris ahead of the German advance, their car heavy with essentials and nothing else. In America, she worked quietly, no fanfare, no feathers, relief parcels, funds, letters. "What I do is small," she said, "but so is bread, and it still feeds the hungry." The gold beneath the glitter. After the war, Consuelo returned to Paris. She walked more slowly now. She stopped to greet the fishermen by the Seine. The Eiffel Tower still blinked over the rooftops as if to say, "You are home." In 1950, the hospital she had funded, the finest in France, was officially opened, and Consuelo received the Légion d'honneur. Justine Godart presented it personally, then turned to Jacques. "You have no decoration of your own, but may I ask you to pin on hers?" It was, she remembered, so very French. In 1953, she published her memoir, The Glitter and the Gold. It was neither scandal nor plea for relevance. It was a reckoning, graceful, perceptive, restrained. She turned herself from subject to narrator. Readers met not a duchess, but a woman who had endured. Jacques died in 1956. She left Paris for a smaller house in Southampton, England. Grandchildren filled the rooms. She read Austen in the afternoons and answered letters in the mornings. She let the world move on without her. She was not hiding. She was stepping away from the stage. In 1964, pneumonia came gently. There was no crowd, no headline, just a final breath in a room of her choosing, beside a window open to the sea. She was 87. Her ashes rest not at Blenheim, not in New York, but in the churchyard at Bladon, a short walk from the palace that once claimed her, under trees, under sky, by blood, by love, by choice. For decades, the Sargent portrait hung in the Great Hall at Blenheim, ivory satin, posture perfect, expression unreadable. But the woman in that frame was not the woman who died. The woman who died had walked through fire. She had been sold, silenced, adorned, and admired. She had worn diamond collars that chafed and tiaras that left her head aching. And then she gave those jewels away, not because they no longer mattered, but because she had found something that mattered more. So here's what I want to ask you. Which moment in Consuelo's life struck you the hardest? Was it the locked door on her wedding morning, the jewel fund? The letter she placed face down in the drawer? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe. We have over 80 women's biographies on this channel, with more arriving every week. I'll see you in the next one.